So let's talk about Burkina Faso. In this West African nation, a new leader has stepped into the spotlight, and he's not your typical politician. His name is Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and at just 37 years old, he is currently the youngest leader in all of Africa. Imagine that. At an age when most of us are still trying to figure out how to fold a fitted sheet, this guy is running a country. He came to power in September 2022, not through an election, but through a military coup. This move instantly made him a figure of intense interest, not just in his home country, but across the entire continent. The reason so many people, especially young Africans, are paying attention is because of what he says. Traoré speaks a language of self-reliance and true independence. He stands up and says that Africa should control its own destiny, its own resources, and not be tied to its former colonial rulers. For many young people who feel let down by older generations of leaders and frustrated with outside influence, this message is powerful. It's like hearing a new song with a beat you can finally dance to. A message that feels fresh, bold, and unapologetically African in a world that often tries to tell Africa what it should be. His rise to fame wasn't just about taking power, it was about the image he projected. He often appears in military fatigues, looking serious and determined, a stark contrast to the suits and ties of many other world leaders. This visual, combined with his strong words, has created a powerful brand. He is seen by his supporters as a revolutionary, a modern-day Thomas Sankara, another charismatic leader from Burkina Faso's past. This has helped him build a strong base of support, with people genuinely believing he can bring about the change they have been waiting so long to see, a real break from the past. Of course, becoming famous this way is a double-edged sword. When you arrive on the scene by force, you immediately create division. While his supporters see a hero, his critics see a military man who has overturned a fragile democratic process. They worry about what this means for the rule of law and the stability of the nation. The international community also raises an eyebrow, because coups are generally frowned upon. So, from the very beginning, Captain Traoré has been a figure who inspires both incredible hope and deep concern, a man walking a tightrope between being a savior and being a problem. One of Captain Traoré's first big moves was to change his country's international friendships. For a very long time, Burkina Faso had a close relationship with France, its former colonial power. But Traoré said, enough of that. He decided to cut many of these long-standing ties. He kicked out the French ambassador and ordered French troops, who were there to help fight extremists, to leave the country. This was a huge statement. It was like breaking up with a very, very old and powerful ex. He argued that these relationships hadn't really helped his country and that it was time for Burkina Faso to stand on its own 2 feet. As he was closing the door on France, he was opening a new one to another global power, Russia. This pivot has been very noticeable. Traoré has praised Russia and sought a closer partnership, especially for military support. In May 2025, he even flew to Moscow to meet with President Vladimir Putin. Pictures of them shaking hands at the Kremlin were shared all over the world. This move has been celebrated by his supporters as a smart way to find new allies who, they believe, will treat Burkina Faso as an equal partner rather than a dependent, a way to show the West that Africa has options. This shift in allegiance is part of a bigger trend in the region. Other countries in West Africa, like Mali and Niger, which also had recent coups, have done the same thing. They formed a sort of alliance, pushing back against Western influence and cozying up to Russia. Analysts say that Russia is very good at using social media and propaganda to support these new leaders. They amplify messages about Pan-Africanism and portray the West as the villain, which finds a very receptive audience among people tired of the old way of doing things, people who feel their voices have been ignored for far too long. But this new friendship with Russia makes a lot of people nervous. Critics worry that Traoré is just swapping one powerful foreign influence for another. They question whether Russia's intentions are truly better than France's. Is this real independence, or is it just changing the master? Furthermore, this decision has isolated Burkina Faso from its regional neighbors in the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, and from Western partners who provide a lot of development aid. It's a high-stakes gamble that could either pay off big or leave the country more isolated and vulnerable than ever before. The people of Burkina Faso are deeply divided over their young leader. On one side, you have a large and vocal group of supporters. In late April 2025, for example, Thousands of people marched in the capital, Ouagadougou, to show their solidarity with him. This happened after rumors of an attempted coup against him began to circulate. These supporters see him as a true patriot. They believe his message of sovereignty and his defiance of the West are exactly what the country needs. To them, he is a hero bravely fighting to reclaim the nation's dignity and control over its own resources, like its gold. This admiration is explained by experts like Chidi Odinkalu, a professor at Tufts University. He says Traore's appeal is genuine because he gives voice to the frustrations of a young population. Many young Africans are tired of seeing leaders who they feel are corrupt and only serve foreign interests. When Traore speaks, they hear someone who is finally talking about their problems and their hopes. He articulates a revolutionary message that resonates deeply with those who feel left behind by a system they see as broken and unfair. His words give them a sense of hope for a different, better future. On the other side of the argument, however, there is growing fear and despair. Despite Traore's promises to improve security, the situation has actually gotten much worse under his rule. The country is fighting a brutal insurgency from extremist groups, and the violence has escalated dramatically. According to data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, or ACLED, the number of people killed in the conflict has more than doubled in the last year. In the year before he took power, about 2,900 people were killed. In the past year, that number has skyrocketed to at least 7,200. This spiraling violence has created a devastating humanitarian crisis. More than 60% of the country is now outside of government control, meaning it's too dangerous for state officials to even go there. The fighting has forced at least 2.1 million people to flee their homes, creating a massive population of internally displaced people. On top of that, nearly 6.5 million people, that's more than a quarter of the entire population, are in desperate need of humanitarian aid just to survive. For these people, the political speeches and promises mean very little when they are facing daily violence and starvation. So what does the future look like for Burkina Faso and its young leader? It's a picture with two very different possibilities. On one hand, there is the potential for a new era of African self-determination. If Captain Traore can successfully navigate these treacherous waters, he could become a symbol for a new generation of leaders across the continent. His story could inspire others to challenge the post-colonial status quo and forge new paths for their nations. The hope is that his bold moves will lead to genuine independence, economic growth, and a stronger, more unified Africa that commands respect on the global stage. However, there is a much darker path that the country could go down. The increasing violence and the worsening humanitarian crisis are not just statistics. They are real-life tragedies happening every single day. If Traore's government cannot get the security situation under control, the country could spiral further into chaos. His gamble of cutting ties with traditional allies could backfire, leaving Burkina Faso isolated and without the resources it needs to handle the immense challenges it faces. The fear is that his revolutionary rhetoric could end up being empty words, masking a reality of more conflict, more suffering, and state collapse. The story of Captain Ibrahim Traore is therefore more than just about one man or one country. It reflects a wider struggle happening across Africa. It's a continent brimming with young people who are demanding change and are impatient for a better future. They are drawn to leaders who speak their language of frustration and hope. Traore's popularity shows that there is a deep hunger for a new kind of leadership, one that is seen as authentic and unapologetically African. This movement is powerful and is unlikely to go away anytime soon, regardless of what happens to Traore himself. In the end, Captain Ibrahim Traore remains a complex and polarizing figure. Is he a hero paving the way for a new, liberated Africa? Or is he a military ruler leading his country toward more instability? The answer is not yet clear. His journey is a powerful reminder that the path to change is often filled with both promise and peril. The future of Burkina Faso, and perhaps a part of Africa's future as well, hangs in the balance depending on whether his bold vision can overcome the brutal reality on the ground. Only time will tell which side of history he will land on.